Because if you look at where atheists and freethinkers were publicly at the end of the 19th century, when you had people like Robert Greene Ingersoll, who were, he gave the keynote address for the Republican National Party. He was known as the great agnostic, debated preachers, gave lectures out in the open on the problems with the Bible and things like that. And then it became kind of taboo to talk about, we don't talk about religion and politics because we want to have nice, peaceful dinners. This is. I'm gonna nitpick with a minor rant for a second, and it's gonna let some of my political leanings fly. But it's about the mindset here. I've come under fire, as have a number of other atheists, that have been identified as new atheists as being too outspoken or too confrontational by a group of people that have been labeled accommodationists. To me, the accommodationists, the let's all get along and have a big tent, that's currently happening in this secular schism that I've labeled, they're the same type of people that made talking about religion and politics taboo. Let's just keep the peace and have a nice quiet dinner party rather than actually discussing things that are real, things that matter. Let's not have any conflict. When it's conflict that actually helps the world change, it's the struggle that helps the world change.
Yes, that's correct, yes.
Seeking this dull gray medium is just so patently offensive to me. And I'll tell you this, that while I do tend to vote Democratic, I don't always vote that way, but I think that the reason that the Democrats lost the House, and they're doing predictably what PZ and others said they would do, is because there are too many people in the Democratic Party that were elected with an accommodationist mindset of, we don't want to ruffle too many feathers, let's see what we can do without losing our positions, and that's why they lost them. I think what we need is Democrats with sacks, who are actually willing to do what they say, because I think you'll find that a lot of Democrats aren't ultra-liberal fiscally and socially. This broad spectrum encompasses a lot of different views within a particular label, Democrat, Republican, whatever. And I think you'll find the same thing on the Republican side, that there are some, perhaps many, who would not necessarily fit into that narrow little box. But we have, if anything, the poison that's been taking over is this accommodationist idea of, let's seek the least common denominator in everything. It irks the crap out of me.
Well, that's just one form of poison.
Why can't we all just get along type of thing?
Yeah, that's one form of poison.
I'll tell you why we can't get along, because some people are wrong.
Exactly. And
this cult of
and you have
personality.
to stand up for your principles, otherwise constant compromise gets nobody anywhere, really.
Yeah.
Let me leave you with one thought here and see what you think of this. I don't know that this is true or not, but it's an idea, and that is that the religious people in the Republican Party, they are religious. One of the things that they need is a feeling that they're being taken care of, and with them, of course, it's God that they feel takes care of them. On the other side, as far as the liberals go, and once again, we're painting a broad brush here, but I think there may be that same need there, the need to feel as if they're being taken care of. Now, with them, it's not God; it's government.
There may be something to that.
I think there's some truth to what you're saying. Yes.
I don't know how much truth there is to it, but there may be something along those lines.
There have been some studies recently. I don't have any names, but that identify kind of liberal and conservative values, and there's a huge overlap between the two of them.
Right.
But there's a couple values that are, the priorities are different.
Yeah.
And I wish I had more to give you on that, but it'd be worth looking that up, because the differences are pretty small. Really, we're sort of all human at the core.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's kept us from clearly identifying exactly what the differences are, so that we might be able to make progress on them, is this idea, this live and let live idea of, we don't want to talk too much about the differences between us. We want to pretend that we're already on the same page, when in fact, if we noticed that we weren't on the same page, we could correct it and maybe get more people on the same page. But I'm just kind of guessing at this point, because I'm not advocating a utopia, and I don't think that
There's
it's
a
realistic
lot of sausage
goal.
making in politics, right? Yeah. Where you don't necessarily want to see how it's made.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot for calling, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your opinions and your commentary. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Bye-bye.
We're going to roll the bones here. We got about 8 minutes or 9 minutes left in the show, and this call may be very quick. I don't know. John in London.
Hi, Matt. We spoke over the email. Do you remember me?
Yeah, didn't I say in the email
Smith.
that the conversation was over?
Yeah, you said that I didn't have any proof and evidence to justify my Christianity.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not that, it's that you reject my evidence. But I'll grant you this and say, what proof and evidence do you have that atheism is accurate and correct?
Didn't I answer this in the email to you, that your question is nonsensical because atheism doesn't have a burden of proof? It is the rejection of claims that haven't met their burden of proof. Your question is nonsensical.
Yeah, atheism is the lack of belief in something.
Yeah, but what proof and evidence do you have?
Okay, I don't know how many other ways I can explain this.
I lack the belief because I know what's inside my head.
I don't know how else I can explain this, but let's imagine that I have a box here, and Don claims that there is a unicorn in this box, and I say I don't believe him. I don't need any proof or evidence that my position is true. My position is validated by the fact that he hasn't presented any evidence for his claim. And when I open the box and look inside, I don't see this. And so then he tells me that it's an invisible unicorn. And I mentioned it wouldn't fit in this box. And he says, no, it's an invisible miniature unicorn. Well, I don't feel it. Well, it's also intangible. Oh, well, how do you know it's there? Well, because it speaks to me. Okay, that's all nonsense. He's made a claim, and he's failed to provide rational evidence for it. My disbelief is justified by that.
Okay, Matt. I'll grant you that. But the invisible unicorn in your imaginary box is not an ideology like atheism is. So what proof and evidence do you have that atheism is accurate?
You're done. You're done, John. You're done. I can't explain it. I explained it in email. I explained it here. We are on a shortened scope. There's no way I'm going to waste time explaining things like that. It's not an ideology. Atheism isn't a dogma. It's not an ideology. It's not a worldview. It is nothing more than a single position on a single issue. If you believe that gods exist, you are a theist. If you do not believe, you are an atheist. Everything else that would be considered ideological is separate, which is why atheists can be libertarians, Green Party, Republican, Democrat, whatever. It's why atheists could be pro-life, pro-choice, whatever. None of those things are derived from atheism. Atheism doesn't tell you anything at all about what you should do. It tells you what it is that you do not believe. I do not believe the claims that gods exist. I'm sorry that you cannot wrap your head around the burden of proof, epistemology, where and how we determine what evidence should or shouldn't be considered valid and useful. I'm absolutely sorry that you can't do that, but I have no other way to explain it to you, which we've done in email and on 2 or 3 shows now. And you've come with, oh, people can drink poisons just like it says in Mark 16. Well, first of all, Mark 16, 9 through 20 is most likely a forgery, and if you do a little research, you'd find that out. Besides the fact that it's asinine to say that you'll know these people because they'll be able to handle snakes and not die and drink poisons and not die, and that they'll cast out devils in my name, and this is how you'll know them. If you actually go and research, those verses do not exist in the oldest and best manuscripts of Mark. But even if they did, even if they're valid, even if they've been there from the beginning, and you know somebody who drank some poison and didn't die, that doesn't mean that the cause of their not dying was a God who's making this statement true. It's asinine. And you're done, John. You don't get on anymore, ever. Jennifer in Kokomo, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
Riled up.
As always, that's what happens when you watch this show.
It's getting hot in here. What you got for us today?
Okay, well, basically, I just kind of wanted to make a comment of what happened to me last night. It's my son's birthday, so I'm always been forced to spend some time with my family. It's been kind of difficult for me because me being atheist, I definitely don't support it. So I'm trying to change the conversation so I can teach them about skeptical thinking. So I decided to have a conversation about science and about theories. And what had happened was, instead of them supporting science and theories, they made jokes. They literally said that science is something that comes out of people's asses.
Who made jokes? I'm not quite following.
Well, we had a birthday party for my son, and it was my mother and then her two friends.
Oh, so
who are all involved in the medical
family?
field.
Okay.
They're all involved in the medical field?
Yes. they're
And
all
they
nurses.
think that science is just something people pull out of their butts.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I was trying, just trying
that's
to
a head
explain to
scratcher.
them the basics.
Have you
what
reported
a
them to the
theory
licensing
is.
bureau for the medical industry that they work for?
And they're dependent on science to treat their patients. But for some reason, this doesn't come together. And, this is why I feel like I'm so passionate about being a skeptic, a skeptical thinker, because these people are voting. These people have great influence, and I think, especially being in the Midwest, that this is a normal way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
I
understand.
empathize.
I don't understand how somebody can be. I mean, when you say they're in the medical profession, obviously we're not talking about doctors.
No, they're nurses.
Okay, but still, I mean, I have a great deal of respect for nurses. Do they think that the scientific knowledge that we've gained about the human body is something people just pulled out of their butts? I mean, when somebody prescribes, when somebody comes in and they need epinephrine, why do they think it works? Is it just magic and coincidence that epinephrine will prevent somebody from going into anaphylactic shock?
I don't know. What I would have liked for them to do is that, what they could have said is like, Jennifer, I don't understand. But instead, I was wrong, and I was laughed at. Instead of, the conversation trying to be continued so people can try to understand, they shut me down, and I was a joke.
I wonder if they accept medical science but reject other scientific theories that they don't comprehend. Things like, for example, dark matter and dark energy is something that to lots of people looks like it's something that they just pulled out of their butt. And so for things that are a little too vast and beyond their ken, it may be that their inability to comprehend it and their ignorance about the subject in general puts them in a position where the only response that they can give is to say, well, people just, they're just making this up. Because I think that if you, for example, evolution is one thing that I would imagine that they're probably scoffing at.
Oh, you can't even have a conversation about evolution with my family.
Well,
But the solution, though, is that if they're accepting medical science but rejecting other things because they can't quite wrap their head around it, it might be a valid tactic to demonstrate to them exactly how evolution plays into medical science, how we watch microorganisms evolve in order to develop vaccines, et cetera.
Well, there's a topic called Darwinian medicine, and we were fortunate enough to hear a lecture on it. But Scientific American has covered it, and I believe there's a couple books on the subject. But it talks about how you can understand so much about maladies and disease from taking an evolutionary viewpoint of how we got to where we are and why the plumbing isn't working right, or why certain microbes are able to defeat our antibiotics or these sorts of things. And that may be something that they will grow as caretakers by learning about this, but it could be a way of defeating
appealing to their knowledge in some way.
Yeah, and there may be people who are just, I'm sorry to say, unreachable. And unfortunately, as much as I'd like to continue, we are now completely out of time. The show's over in like 25 seconds.
Okay.
So thanks
for
very
calling.
much for calling.
Thank you so much, man.
And
That was a great show. So
please
I
call
really
back another
appreciate
time.
this.
Thanks a lot to the crew. They're listed up on the screen, particularly Joe Rhodes, who is leaving us. Thanks so much for years of dedicated service to bring the show to millions. And there will be no show next week. Sorry about the late notice, but we'll see you in 2 weeks.